Some of the new rules of this space. What we call advertising in the old world, maybe we'll call it content, maybe we'll call it something else in the future, but advertising just can't interrupt in the same way. That control that's shifted to the consumer means they just have too many choices and too much control. They will avoid direct advertising, blatant cut-through, because people are looking for a broader experience, a broader integrity. Please come in. And ads must change into content that actually deserves that audience, because it's something that the audience can turn on or off like that. Brand stories don't live to the brand schedule or to the department schedule, they live to the audience schedule. It's 24/7, it's across all channels. Mostly on, and this is the opportunity, mostly on social channels or platforms which are owned by the function, the department, the brand themselves. And those brand stories have to be so good, so true, and ultimately contagious that they will compel the audience to want to share them. Again, that's the validity, that's the social amplification, which replaces the traditional media distribution model. If that sounds like a future model for you and where you're at, let me make it seem even harder and talk about some of the philosophical changes that companies, organizations or entities or NGOs or whatever, that it's the model that has to be embraced for this stuff to work. And one of the most confronting pieces of this is that people don't really care about what your company is, what your organization is, what your department is. They don't really care about your services. They only care about them in the context of solving their problems. That is what they're Googling for. That's the question. That's your opportunity for them to find you. Answer their questions to help guide them to your solutions. Don't just talk about your solutions because they don't care. Give them the bridge that will help them get there. The hugest trend, I think, of all of this momentum that social's really brought on is this continual drive for transparency. We crave transparency. We want to know the truth of what's inside an organization. We inherently, as companies, as organizations, as departments, we've spent decades making sure the truth never gets out. We have whole departments to ensure that the truth stays within the organization, and the message we want to create is controlled and exported to a willing ecosystem that will then take our messages and we can influence them. That is entirely contrary to the direction that social is taking this whole online environment. The more you stay focused on maintaining a facade, the more the risk, the more the ultimate potential and the ultimate come down when that facade cracks. Because at some point in time, the likelihood, whether it's now, next week, 2 years in the future, that's going to have a ramification for the organization that telling the truth wouldn't have. Another big trend here, and I love this term, it's flawed meets awesome. This term is basically to define the fact that as individuals, and we know this, you cannot possibly be friends with someone who is perfect, apart from the fact they're really annoying. They just, you want to have a chink, you want to have some sort of personal connection, you want to see some emotion, you want to feel a connection with someone, and you just cannot do that with someone who's Mr. Perfect or who's just says they are fantastic and everything's awesome all the time. The same is true with organizations. If we're now expecting audiences to build some sort of loyalty, engagement, trust with us as an entity, then we need to find a model that will enable a humanness and not quite perfectness to be communicated through the way we go to market. Now that, again, is an enormous challenge. Okay? No one wants to admit they make mistakes. But it's how you react to those mistakes. Some of the greatest case studies in social media, for example, are exactly how companies or organizations recover from the disaster. Accepting that nobody's perfect is a fantastic conceptual way of helping people to understand that you actually are real people behind the scenes and this isn't just an evil beast up there who we can take down and personify in some evil way.